Emotional detachment is often misunderstood because people confuse control with suppression. Suppression is the act of pushing emotions away, pretending they do not exist, or labeling them as weakness. Detachment, on the other hand, is the practice of allowing emotions to arise while refusing to surrender authority to them. It is not about becoming numb. It is about becoming conscious. A woman who practices emotional detachment does not lose her sensitivity, she refines it. Emotions are signals. They arise in response to experiences, thoughts, memories, and expectations. When a woman feels anger, sadness, joy, or fear, it means something within her is being touched. Emotional detachment does not silence these signals. Instead, it teaches her to listen without immediately reacting. This listening creates space. In that space, emotion transforms from a force that controls behavior into information that guides understanding. Coldness is the absence of warmth, empathy, and connection. Detachment is the presence of awareness. A cold person avoids feeling because feeling feels unsafe. A detached person feels fully but remains grounded. She can cry without losing direction, love without losing self-respect, and face disappointment without collapsing internally. Her heart remains open, but her mind remains steady. Many women are taught directly or indirectly that expressing emotion defines their worth. If they care deeply, they are seen as loving. If they withdraw, they are judged as distant. This creates pressure to perform emotions rather than understand them. Emotional detachment frees a woman from this performance. She no longer needs to prove how much she feels. She knows it within herself. When emotions dominate the mind, they distort reality. A moment of rejection can feel like a lifetime of unworthiness. A single conflict can feel like total abandonment. Detachment interrupts this distortion. It reminds the mind that emotions are temporary states, not permanent truths. By recognizing this, a woman stops making long-term decisions based on short-term feelings. Self-control is not force, it is alignment. A detached woman does not fight her emotions, she guides them. When anger arises, she does not immediately speak, she pauses. When fear appears, she does not immediately retreat. She observes. This pause is powerful. It prevents regret, unnecessary conflict, and self-betrayal. Over time, the mind learns that it does not need to react instantly to survive. Feeling deeply is not the same as being emotionally exposed. Depth of feeling becomes dangerous only when boundaries are absent. Emotional detachment strengthens boundaries. It allows a woman to give love without giving up her center. She can care about outcomes without being destroyed by them. She understands that her peace is not dependent on how others behave. This kind of detachment also heals emotional exhaustion. When a woman absorbs every emotion around her, she becomes tired, confused, and resentful. Detachment teaches her what belongs to her and what does not. She learns to support others without carrying their pain as her own. Compassion remains, but emotional overload disappears. Detachment is also an act of self-respect. It communicates, both internally and externally, that her emotional energy is valuable. She does not waste it on chaos, manipulation, or uncertainty. She chooses where to invest her feelings, just as she chooses where to invest her time and effort. A woman who understands emotional detachment becomes reliable to herself. She trusts her responses because they are not impulsive. She trusts her decisions because they are not driven by fear or craving. Even in moments of emotional intensity, she remains connected to her principles. True detachment does not remove softness. It protects it. By not allowing emotions to rule the mind, a woman preserves her ability to love, empathize, and connect without losing herself. She becomes emotionally mature, not emotionally distant. In this way, emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of it. And mastery does not diminish the heart, it stabilizes it. Attachment to validation begins subtly. It often disguises itself as politeness, care, or the desire to be understood. Over time, however, it becomes a quiet dependency. When a woman measures her worth through praise, attention, or acceptance from others, she slowly hands over authority of her inner world. Her emotional state starts rising and falling according to reactions that are outside her control. External validation is unstable by nature. People's opinions change, their moods shift, Their attention moves elsewhere. When self-worth is built on something so temporary, emotional instability becomes inevitable. One compliment can create confidence, and one criticism can undo it. This creates a fragile inner structure that cannot withstand pressure, conflict, or rejection. Inner authority is the ability to stand firmly in one's values regardless of external response. It is not arrogance or emotional isolation. It is self-trust. When validation becomes a need rather than a bonus, self-trust weakens. Decisions are no longer guided by principle, but by fear of disapproval. A woman may silence her truth, tolerate disrespect, or overextend herself just to remain accepted. Detachment restores inner leadership by returning responsibility to where it belongs. A detached woman understands that appreciation is pleasant, but not necessary for self-respect. She listens to feedback without becoming dependent on it. Praise does not inflate her, and criticism does not collapse her. She evaluates input calmly and decides what aligns with her values. Emotional dependence on validation often creates performance-based living. A woman begins to act in ways that will be liked rather than ways that are honest. Over time, this creates internal conflict. The outer self may appear agreeable, while the inner self feels unheard and exhausted. Detachment removes the need to perform. It allows authenticity to replace approval seeking. When inner authority is absent, emotions become reactive. Silence from others feels like rejection. Boundaries feel risky. Saying no feels like abandonment. Detachment interrupts these reactions by strengthening self-connection. A woman no longer interprets every external response as a judgment of her worth. She understands that others' reactions reflect their own inner world, not her value. Restoring inner leadership does not mean rejecting connection. It means choosing connection from a place of wholeness rather than need. A detached woman enjoys validation without chasing it. She receives love without clinging to it. She stands in relationships as an equal, not as someone seeking permission to exist. This shift creates emotional stability. When approval is no longer the source of self-worth, emotions settle. Confidence becomes consistent rather than conditional. Peace becomes internal rather than negotiated. A woman becomes less anxious, less reactive, and more centered because her foundation is no longer external. Detachment also sharpens discernment. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" the question becomes, "Is this aligned with who I am?" This single shift changes everything. Choices become clearer, boundaries become natural, self-respect becomes non-negotiable. Inner authority grows through repeated self-alignment. Each time a woman honors her values despite discomfort, she strengthens trust in herself. Each time she resists the urge to seek approval at the cost of authenticity, she builds emotional independence. Detachment is not withdrawal from others, it is loyalty to the self. When a woman no longer chases validation, her presence changes. She becomes calm, grounded, and confident without effort. This confidence is not loud. It does not demand attention. It commands respect because it is rooted, not reactive. In this way, detachment does not isolate a woman. It liberates her. By releasing the need for validation, she regains inner authority. And with inner authority comes clarity, stability, and self-directed strength. Emotional discipline is the foundation of mental clarity. Without it, the mind becomes crowded with reactions, assumptions, and impulses that blur perception. When emotions are left untrained, they rush to interpret every situation, often exaggerating meaning and urgency. Detachment introduces order into this chaos. It teaches the mind to slow down, to pause before responding, and to observe what is actually happening, rather than what is being emotionally projected. The ability to pause is not weakness, it is strength under control. Most emotional suffering is not caused by events themselves, but by the speed at which the mind reacts to them. A comment is made, and the mind immediately labels it as disrespect. A message goes unanswered, and the mind instantly creates stories of rejection. Detachment breaks this automatic chain. It inserts a moment of stillness between stimulus and response. In that stillness, clarity begins to form. Observation is the next discipline. When a woman observes her emotions rather than identifying with them, she creates psychological distance. The emotion is no longer who I am, but what I am experiencing. This shift is subtle but powerful. Anger becomes something arising within awareness. not something driving behavior. Fear becomes a signal to examine, not a command to obey. Through observation, emotions lose their ability to dominate the mind. Mental clarity arises when emotions are placed in proper proportion. Detachment allows the mind to see emotions as temporary states rather than permanent realities. This prevents overreaction. A difficult moment is seen as a moment, not a definition of life. A mistake is recognized as a lesson, not a personal failure. The mind becomes cleaner because it is no longer cluttered with exaggerated interpretations. Impulse is the enemy of clarity. Impulsive reactions often bring regret, conflict, and confusion. Words spoken in emotional heat cannot be taken back. Decisions made in emotional urgency often contradict long-term values. Emotional discipline trains restraint. It teaches the mind that not every feeling requires expression, and not every thought requires action. This restraint creates precision in behavior. Conscious response is the outcome of this training. A conscious response is aligned with intention rather than emotion. It considers consequences rather than immediate relief. A detached woman responds from principle, not provocation. She chooses her words carefully, her actions deliberately, and her silence wisely. This does not make her passive, it makes her effective. Mental clarity also enhances self-trust. When reactions are impulsive, the mind becomes unpredictable. A woman may later question her own decisions and regret her behavior. With emotional discipline, responses become consistent. Over time, she learns that she can rely on herself even in emotionally charged situations. This trust further stabilizes the mind. Detachment sharpens perception by removing emotional noise. When emotions are unregulated, they color every interaction. Neutral events are interpreted personally. Detachment clears this distortion. It allows a woman to see situations as they are, not as her emotions frame them. This clarity improves communication, problem-solving, and decision-making. The practice of emotional discipline also reduces mental fatigue. Constant emotional reactivity consumes energy. The mind becomes tired from fighting, defending, and justifying. Detachment conserves this energy. By responding consciously, the mind remains calm and focused. Peace becomes sustainable rather than fragile. Over time, emotional discipline reshapes identity. A woman no longer sees herself as someone who is too emotional or easily affected. She becomes someone who is centered and composed. This composure is not artificial, it is trained. It is the result of repeated moments of choosing awareness over reaction. Mental clarity does not eliminate emotion, it organizes it. Emotions are felt, understood, and released without hijacking the mind. This balance allows a woman to navigate life with confidence and precision. She becomes less reactive to chaos and more responsive to reality. In this way, emotional discipline through detachment is not about control for its own sake. It is about freedom. Freedom from impulsive behavior, freedom from unnecessary suffering, and freedom to act in alignment with one's deepest values. Mental clarity is the natural result of this freedom. Balanced detachment is often mistaken for distance, yet in reality it creates the conditions for deeper and healthier relationships. When a woman relates to others without losing herself emotionally, she brings stability into connection. Relationships suffer not because people care too little, but because they care without direction. When emotions lead without principles, attachment turns into control, fear, and dependency. Balanced detachment restores order by allowing emotion to exist within clear inner boundaries. Many relationship conflicts arise from emotional fusion, where one person's mood, behavior, or approval becomes the regulator of another's emotional state. In such dynamics, self-respect gradually weakens. A woman may tolerate behavior that contradicts her values simply to avoid emotional discomfort or loss. Detachment breaks this pattern. It allows her to remain connected without becoming absorbed. She can care deeply while still standing on her own ground. Guiding emotions with principles creates predictability and trust. When responses are impulsive, relationships become unstable. Partners, friends, or family members never know what reaction to expect. Emotional discipline brings consistency. A detached woman responds in ways that align with her values, regardless of emotional intensity. This consistency builds respect, because others sense that her behavior is not reactive, but intentional. Boundaries become clearer when detachment is present. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They communicate what is acceptable and what is not. Without detachment, boundaries feel threatening because emotions fear rejection or conflict. With detachment, boundaries feel natural. A woman can say no without guilt and yes without self-betrayal. Her limits are not defensive, they are calm and firm. Healthy relationships require two whole individuals, not one person compensating for another's emotional imbalance. Balanced detachment supports this wholeness. A woman no longer seeks to be needed to feel valued, nor does she fear independence in others. She allows people to be responsible for their own emotions. This reduces manipulation, emotional bargaining, and resentment. Self-respect grows when actions align with inner principles. Every time a woman chooses dignity over impulse, she strengthens her sense of self. Detachment helps her pause before reacting emotionally and ask whether her response honors her values. Over time, this alignment becomes identity. She no longer needs to demand respect because she demonstrates it through her behavior. Balanced detachment also improves communication. When emotions are uncontrolled, conversations turn into battles for validation. Words are used to defend, accuse, or manipulate. Detachment removes this urgency. A woman can listen without preparing a reaction, speak without aggression, and remain silent without withdrawal. This quality of presence changes the tone of relationships. Emotional impulses often seek immediate relief rather than long-term harmony. Detachment prioritizes long-term well-being. It allows a woman to endure temporary discomfort instead of sacrificing self-respect. She understands that not every emotion needs to be acted upon, and not every conflict needs to be escalated. This wisdom preserves relationships that are healthy and reveals those that are not. In romantic relationships, balanced detachment prevents both clinginess and avoidance. Love is expressed without fear of loss controlling behavior. Trust replaces anxiety. A woman can love fully while remaining grounded. She does not chase affection or withhold it as punishment. Her emotional availability is steady because it is not driven by insecurity. Detachment also protects against emotional burnout. Constant emotional engagement without boundaries drains energy. By guiding emotions with principles, a woman chooses when to engage and when to step back. This balance preserves compassion without self-neglect. Ultimately, balanced detachment strengthens both connection and character. Relationships become places of mutual respect rather than emotional survival. A woman becomes reliable to herself and safe for others. When emotions serve principles instead of impulses, love becomes stable, boundaries become clear, and self-respect becomes unshakable.